So, welcome. Those of you watching after the fact where you're catching us sort of mid-conversation, there's a little setup. Okay, what we were saying, the meditation, so we were just talking about temperature in terms of being comfortable to sit. And the short answer is, from my perspective, again, one person's opinion, because there are certainly meditative traditions that think that it's a really great thing to challenge yourself with, say, absolute stillness, so that like you may actually be feeling pain at points in that kind of a practice. Others will, anyway, there's a lot of different approaches. For me, I personally think that if discomfort is your game, okay. I think life is uncomfortable enough often without us adding to it unnecessarily. So as much as we want to be still when we're sitting, I think that it always behooves us to make efforts to ensure that we're comfortable and so on, right? So I think that it speaks to a larger issue in meditation, which is, so we were talking about before I pressed play on the camera, about the idea of like sweating through your shirt because you're trying so hard at what you're doing in terms of a sit, which, that's a thing, it can happen. But in general, with meditation, it's the opposite of that. There is no wrong, right? It's all just practice, but to the extent that we are committing any effort, like we're efforting, at all, let alone to the extent that we would be totally sweat through, I think it's that we don't need to do that. It's a misallocation of effort, let's think of it that way. So what we want to do, and this actually plays right into our sit today, okay? We could call this a lot of things. We could call it doing nothing. We could call it a practice of radical acceptance. I mean that seriously. We could call it a simple way of tuning in both to the present moment and to ourselves. The labels are really less important. For the first set of 2021, my feeling was, in terms of what I wanted to offer and wanted to share for us to sit, was less, because 2020 was a lot. So, and 2021 is going to be a lot. I mean, life is a lot, and there's no judgment implied there. It's just like, that is it. But I think that one of the absolute sweetest parts of meditation in my practice are those times where the frenetic pace of life, all of the distractions and the concerns and dramas and all the rest of it, and by the way, that could be during a pandemic where we're still feeling isolated and so on, but you could still be all sped up and caught up in your world, right? Because even if you're not moving anywhere, even if you're not seeing anyone, our minds are these potent vessels of creation almost, that can create a whole world with all of the anxieties and stresses that would come along with a life lived out in the world, meeting people, doing things, right? So I guess what I'm saying there is that when we kind of take all of that away, we just strip it aside and just sit and just accept who we are, accept how we are, and accept that this moment is what it is, and it's going to be, and then it's not. That's our practice today. Okay? Any questions from the room before we get going? And it would be, yeah. Excellent question. So I'm just gonna. I think that's fine, and I'm just gonna restate it so that people at home will get it. So the question was, if you had a challenging holiday, kind of a crappy time, and emotions come up in the meditation, what's the play there? What's the strategy? And I guess what I would say with respect to, again, different teachers, different approaches, or different traditions, what I would say is, with anything that's going to be challenging or difficult when we sit, number one is safety first. Again, I'm not being facetious in saying that. So if you are feeling upset, if the emotion, you're feeling overwhelmed, then I would say the absolute first thing is, if it's becoming too much and only you really know when that is, you break, you pause, you take have a drink, walk around, do something just to like pump the gas, or pump the gas, don't pump the gas, pump the brake, pump the gas. Oh yeah. Okay, so that's one. But I think more generally, Sue, in terms of that question, it's such a great question, and this isn't theoretical, this is my lived experience in the sense of how I practice yoga and how I meditate. And I think that it beyond me, I think that there's something in here, maybe for you, which is to say, when emotions come up or pain comes up of any sort, of like physical pain, emotional struggle, anything like that, bearing in mind that you are okay enough to handle what's coming up, and that is an ongoing, like you're checking in with yourself moment to moment, right? So that you're not like sort of descending into a pit of despair and then 5 minutes later go, oh my gosh, and you've lost it. Instead, it's like constantly checking in. How am I, and more to the point, the question you might ask yourself is, how am I relating to what's coming up? Whether that's an emotion, whether that's a thought, whether that's a physical sensation, what is my feeling about the feeling, right? And so I guess what I'm saying there is, if it's too tough to handle, back off. But the real learning and the real growth, I think, that we can get in a practice like this is like a Vipassana tradition, like an insight tradition, is to learn from our sins to some extent. I think that as much as you can handle it, I would encourage you to go into it. So, if you have an uncomfortable emotion like anger arises, or fear, or disgust, or whatever it is, just getting curious about it. Like and here's a maybe a nice cue. This is the one that I have adopted, not just in my meditation practice, but literally in my day-to-day waking experience, at least when I can just admitting someone here, when I can remember to do it. And the statement is this: it's like, aha, a teacher's here. What have I got to learn from you? So and I mean that seriously. So if I'm feeling angry in the moment, I'll use that just as our sample, statement. I'm talking to someone and I feel like they've insulted or been ignorant or something. The kind of go-to reaction is like, we know anger, right? It's like, not happy about this. And that's doubly dangerous when that anger is turned against ourselves, right? Because it's just like pinballing around in there. So what I literally have been doing with these difficult emotions, and it's come right out of the meditation, and now it's kind of diffused into life in general, is I'm now having these moments, and this is, I guess I'm offering this as an idea that you could play with. You're feeling bummed out about what your Christmas was like, and that whatever the emotion is that wells up, you hold it for a moment, and then it's, aha, you're here. You must be here for a reason. What have I got to learn from you? So there's your teacher. So there's my great question, great place to take us. I don't know if the advice is great. You can let me know that. But that's, you're so welcome. Any other questions? Oh, okay. So I haven't given you an object upon which you can focus. So we're gonna begin to sit. So warm, cold, standing, sitting, lying, it really doesn't matter. Let's just organize our bodies into a position that feels good, okay, that feels accessible. So unless the point of your meditation is to make yourself uncomfortable and to focus there, and that's, again, like I say, that's legit. You might decide to do that, but probably not for today. We want to accept things just as they are. We don't want to ramp it up, okay? Pump the brake, not the gas. Maybe begin by just checking in with your breath, checking in with your body. I noticed even just in that last inhale, there was a little kind of hang in my breath. So without trying to control anything, just smoothing things out, relaxing. And then as far as your point of focus, where you're going to let your attention rest and where you're going to return when you become distracted. Notice I didn't say if. Even if you're an Olympic meditator, in fact, especially if you are, those breaks, those interruptions where we notice we've become distracted, we wake up to that and we return. We're strengthening the meditative muscle there in our brains and in our hearts. We're reorienting our whole way of being. So accepting means accepting that we'll be distracted. Accepting means that we will feel things. We will think things. But whether you're focused on the breath at the tip of your nose, some gentle sensation in your body like tips of your fingers, something uncomplicated, or your breath in your chest, whatever it is. For me, I actually like to go to the outline of my body. Just feel my skin where it touches the ground, touches the wood floor, touches the block under my sitting bones. Where the air is making contact with our skin. The touch of clothes against your body. All the random sensations that come up wherever, whenever. And just going easy on yourself, know that when we're so used to wanting control and to direct not just our attention but our lives, which is normal, of course, that relinquishing that, making less effort and just being okay with what's happening, and in particular, not falling into distraction, intentionally or unintentionally, that can be tricky, but that's the jam of this. So just go easy, whatever the shape of your attention right now. Come back to you in a couple of minutes. Just explore that, and then we'll follow this pattern for the rest of the sit. Moments of silence punctuated by little check-ins, and I'll give you a suggestion or two. So just accepting this. So you might hear, whether it's in your environment or in mine, ambient noises, the bark of a dog, the growl of the stomach, whatever it is, or barking at yourself. So let's let go of judging. I say that like that's an easy thing. It is not. It is the work of a lifetime. But notice that. So if you heard that little dog bark a moment ago, I could feel it viscerally in my body, a reaction of no, wrong, out of place, not welcome. And instead it's the place, nah, that's okay. That's okay, welcome. So if it helps here, just part of the focus, wherever it is you're resting your attention, is to notice those moments where you begin to, maybe not even as far as an outright judgment, but even just categorizing, labeling. How does the experience of the dog bark change if it's not a dog barking? It's not an interruption. It's not an inconvenience. It's just sound. It's literally just vibrations in the air. Who's going to get upset about that? And I know my peeps out there, so you might be the internal voice, you're like turning that around in your mind, just kind of holding the cue that I'm throwing to you. And maybe, and I'm okay with you judging what I'm saying or judging me, that's neither here nor there, but maybe you're judging the judge, like you're judging yourself. So you say, oh, I'm not doing this right, or I wish this was different. And then you add on top of that judgment, the judgment of the judgment. Oh, now I'm judging myself. Oh, I did it again. Oh, let it go. Okay? Let it go. Be okay with the fact that you will judge me, yourself, others. And accept it. Accepting it doesn't mean endorsing it. It just means noticing that it's here and it's a thing, and that's okay. So staying with this, however it feels, whatever it looks like. Good. So just as you are. one strategy that you can use with a practice like this, with any practice really, but particularly with this one, is in becoming aware of what's going on. We can use just a small note or a label about what's actually happening. And we're not going to pick that label up and then, dive into a whole story about it. So if the label is judging, or the label is, contempt, like we're feeling something really, crappy about ourselves, or kind of the interplay that the Buddhist meditation traditions tend to talk about craving and pulling things in, or aversion and pushing things away. Just go there, pulling, wanting, desire, or maybe the note is, fear, aversion, contempt, whatever it is. You don't have to change any of it. Just know that you are not implicated. Whatever is drifting up, out, and into your active awareness, there's not a one of us that asked for it. It is equal parts subconscious. It's a whole bunch of cultural affectation and baggage that we all come to the party with, built over years and years. Or it's just random, our physical environment, the outside of our world, or the internal environment, the inside. We don't control those things either, necessarily. So maybe not so radical to accept all of this, to let it just be what it is. And you've got to get it a jail-free card, if it feels like a jail. And that card is the certainty of change. The fact that experience is never, it cannot be by definition, unchanging, rigid, stable. Life is flow. And so is attention. So just let it be in flow. And if you can't let it be, that's part of letting it be, maybe. Final minute, and just notice how this lands as I kind of drop this in, as I throw it your way, offer it up. You are perfect. Perfect. Exactly as you are right now. Now you might feel the rise up of, objection. Notice that. Don't judge it. It's real. Doesn't change the fact that you are awesome. that even though all of our lives we face challenges, we face heartache, we face suffering, and we experience these things on our own behalf and on behalf of those that we care for and care about. In the same way we practice, and we, rather than trying to add effort to meditate, we reduce effort, we take it away to reveal what's already there. So rather than adding judgment, adding analysis, adding a whole bunch of nonsense that is, it's normal, it's natural, and it's part of us, but rather than rising to object, to say, no, wait, there's this. I wish this was different. I wish that was different. I would change this. Consider that you got to this moment, this exact moment in the space of your life where you're sitting here. Took a lot of effort, a lot of being to get here. So just be okay with it. And when you're ready, if your eyes are closed, maybe gently opening them up. Letting the room come back in. All right. And final thought here, if you're wondering where this particular one came from today. I'm not going to ask actually, although in a moment I'd be totally keen to hear from people about resolutions that you may have made for the new year. I've never personally been much for resolutions, which is to say, the way I operate, if I decide I want to do something, it doesn't have to be January 1st, it could be the 15th of June, and cool, let's do it. But on the one hand, while I think that the idea of not self-improvement with anyone else's standard in mind, but the idea of affecting change in your life, a change in our lives that is something that you care about and want to achieve, I think that's wonderful. And if resolutions help a person to do that, also wonderful. But, and I'm going to share this by way of illustration. I asked my high school students today, 16-year-olds, about New Year's resolutions they may have made. And then I asked them about if they had noticed, because they were chatting them out, typing them to me, if they had noticed a pattern at all. I didn't tell them we were meditating, right? But it's all about pattern recognition to some extent. In any case, what the commonality was, and they got it, they did see it ultimately, is that not a single resolution was, I want to do more of the things about me or in my life that are already awesome. Not one of them said, I just want to be more of this, more of me, just as I am. It was a lot of 16-year-olds, but people, I want a six-pack, I want to do this, I'm going to do that. And, that's the human condition. We're built that way. But it's also, I think, a little bit unfortunate. Why can't we, or why shouldn't we resolve to embrace the things that already are? Why does everything need to be fixed? Look, too, I recognize, we're in a community here at Epilepsy Toronto. I'm not so, off my rocker that I'm saying there aren't, say, in terms of health, neurology, that there aren't things that people aren't rightly concerned about and wouldn't want to be different, or other health things that we have, or relationships that maybe are in states of disrepair, or whatever it is. But still, you're here, you're doing it, you're awesome. There it is. Any questions, anything to share there, any comments from the group? Yeah, well, I think I totally hear you. I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it interesting? Like you said, worry. You were talking about worrying about health, and I mean, the worry itself is it feels lousy, but it's our brain trying to keep. It's like in your case, trying to keep you safe, right? Um, so it definitely. I mean, I don't know. I think the idea of setting a goal, like I'm gonna worry less, or I'm gonna be less anxious, or I'm not gonna get angry at so and so. All totally valid. Well, I'm not sure. I wouldn't say that it's not possible. But I guess what I would say is that again, everyone has their, and this is where I'm like when I'm throwing out for questions from the group, I'm truly like I'm mining the wisdom of our group, because I certainly don't have it all figured out, right? But um, I think that if we're talking about these emotions, like that's where I was what I was getting at earlier, talking about like, oh, you're here, welcome, is the idea that like they exist for a reason. It's not worry that lasts for hours and hours and hours and days and so on, and that is out of control. But but I think that we can, like I said, yeah, it's that. It's about how do we relate to the thing. So like maybe resisting a little bit less, fighting against it a little bit less. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Um, for sure, and that's why, like, if we're talking about someone, it doesn't even have to be epilepsy, just someone who is dealing with something that was traumatic, a loss, or just whatever, something like something that they've experienced that is truly like destabilizing in that way. I would not suggest just heading into that. Certainly not without support, right? Like, this is why, like, meditation, I think, can be a wonderful tool for that kind of insight that you were talking about, the sort of approach to life. But it's not the only tool in the kit, right? Like, um, we need friends. We need, sometimes therapy is a wonderful thing. Like there's lots of things out there. I guess what I would say is, to the extent that you're playing with changes in your own life, or where any of us are looking at resolving to be different or to make changes, what I have noticed, and this is relatively recent, is that what works better for me, not necessarily, well, actually, interestingly, it works best in terms of goal achievement as well. But the big thing here, what I'm going to suggest, is that I feel better about myself in terms of what's going on, regardless of the journey, if you will. And it's that I don't make resolutions like I am going to lose 10 pounds. I genuinely don't do that anymore. But I do make commitments or set intentions to myself, and I have been doing that the past week for the coming year. I've got a whole list of things that are kind of like cooking, percolating in the background, but they're not in line with achieving a goal. They are more in line with me expressing the values and the things that are important to me more consistently. So, rather than saying, I'm going to lose this weight, instead it's like, how can I be more healthy? How can I live in a way that is in line with my values around that? So maybe that, there's an idea too in terms of approach. I'm just gonna, if we have more questions, certainly buy out there in the interweb. I'm just stopping the camera there because they're getting